I can still picture that winter when the world was draped in a blanket of snow. I was a young girl then, and my family had moved to a lively town called Vintera in Switzerland for a brief chapter of our lives. Everything felt new and unfamiliar, yet strangely magical. School in Vintera was a challenge at first. The language, German, laced with the local Swiss dialect, was like a puzzle I couldn't quite solve. But over the months, I began to find my place. Vintera was a bustling, modern town nestled in a valley surrounded by jagged, snow-dusted mountains. The air was crisp, and the streets sparkled under layers of fresh snow. Shop windows glowed with warm golden light, and the scent of roasted chestnuts drifted from market stalls. The train station was the heartbeat of the town, with sleek trains gliding in and out, carrying people to far-off places or nearby villages. Trains were more than just transportation in Switzerland, they were a way of life. They ran with such precision you could set your watch by them. I loved watching them, their silver bodies cutting through the snowy landscape like arrows. I wasn't alone in this new world. I had 3 close friends from school, Livia, Marcus, and Elise. We were inseparable, a little band of explorers navigating the wonders and challenges of Vintera. We spent our days laughing, sharing secrets, and helping each other with homework in the cozy corner of a local cafe, where the owner, Frau Heller, always snuck us extra pastries. Elise was the youngest of our group, just 11 years old. She had bright green eyes that seemed to hold 1,000 unspoken thoughts, and her chestnut hair was always tied back with a ribbon. She carried a small leather satchel everywhere, stuffed with treasures, a notebook filled with her sketches, a tiny tin of peppermint candies, and a worn-out keychain shaped like a mountain goat, a gift from her grandmother. Elise was quiet, but her smile could light up a room, and when she felt safe, her laughter was contagious. One icy February weekend, we hatched a plan for an adventure. We decided to take a train from Vintera to a nearby village called Solberg, known for its frozen lake and a tiny market that sold hand-carved wooden toys. It wasn't a long trip, barely an hour, but to us, it felt like we were setting off to the edge of the world. We woke before dawn that Saturday, our breath puffing into clouds in the frosty air. Snowflakes danced lazily from the sky, dusting our scarves and hats. I wore my favorite wool coat, a deep burgundy that my mother said made me look like a character from a storybook. Livia had a knitted cap with a pom-pom that bobbed as she walked. Marcus, always practical, wore a heavy jacket and carried a thermos of hot cocoa to share. Elise, though, was proudest of her outfit, a forest green coat her mother had sewn for her, lined with soft fleece. She said it felt like a hug, keeping her warm against the Swiss winter. The Vintera train station was a grand structure, all glass and steel, with arched ceilings that echoed with the hum of voices and the screech of arriving trains. People hurried across the platform, their boots crunching on the thin layer of snow that the workers couldn't quite keep at bay. Announcements blared in German, French, and Italian, a reminder of Switzerland's patchwork of languages. We clutched our bags tightly, staying close as we navigated the crowd. Elisa's satchel bounced against her hip, and she kept one hand on it, as if guarding her little world of treasures. When our train pulled in, we scrambled aboard, grateful to escape the biting cold. It was a modern train, with clean lines and wide windows that framed the snowy Alps like a painting. We found a small compartment just for us, 6 seats, 3 on each side, upholstered in soft gray fabric. We piled in, shedding our scarves and gloves, our cheeks flushed from the cold. The compartment felt like our own private hideaway, a cozy bubble in the middle of the vast winter. As the train began to move, the world outside transformed. Snow-covered fields stretched endlessly, dotted with clusters of pine trees heavy with white. Tiny villages with red-tiled roofs flashed by, their chimneys puffing smoke into the gray sky. Inside, the train was warm, the hum of the engine a soothing lullaby. We sprawled across the seats, passing around Marcus's thermos of cocoa and a tin of buttery shortbread biscuits I'd brought from home. Elise claimed the window seat, pressing her nose to the glass. Her green eyes sparkled as she watched the snow swirl outside. "It's like we're in a snow globe," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. Livia laughed and tossed a biscuit crumb at her, which Elise dodged with a giggle. We talked about everything and nothing, our strict math teacher, the upcoming school play, and whether we'd be brave enough to try ice skating on Solberg's frozen lake. For a while, the world felt perfect. The train rocked gently, and our laughter filled the compartment. Then came a sharp knock at the door. We froze, turning toward the sound. The door slid open, revealing a tall woman in a crisp navy uniform, her cap tilted slightly to one side. Her name tag read Frau Kessler, and her expression was stern, her eyes scanning us like a hawk. She was the ticket inspector, a figure as much a part of Swiss trains as the tracks themselves. Everyone knew the inspectors were no nonsense. They checked tickets with a precision that matched the train's timetables. "Tickets, please," she said, her voice clipped but polite. One by one, we handed over our tickets. I passed mine first, a small slip of paper with the Winter Solberg route printed in neat black ink. Frau Kessler examined it, nodded, and handed it back. Livia and Marcus followed, their tickets checked without issue. Then it was Elise's turn. Elise reached into her satchel, her fingers rummaging through her collection of treasures. She pulled out her notebook, then her candy tin, setting them on the seat beside her. Her movements grew frantic as she searched, her brow furrowing. We watched in silence, the air in the compartment growing heavy. I can't find it," Elise whispered, her voice trembling. Her cheeks flushed pink, and her hands shook as she dug deeper into the satchel. Frau Kessler's frown deepened. "Please look again," she said. Her tone firm but not unkind. Elise searched her coat pockets, then her satchel again. Her fingers brushing past pencils and the goat keychain. Nothing. Her eyes darted to us, wide with panic. "I swear I had it," she said, her voice barely audible. The inspector's gaze softened slightly, but her posture remained rigid. "Do you have any identification?" she asked. Elise fumbled for her school ID, a small card with her name and photo. She handed it over, her hands trembling so much that the card nearly slipped. Frau Kessler studied it, then made a note on her clipboard. "You'll need to come with me," she said, gesturing toward the door. We exchanged glances, unsure what was happening. "It's just a ticket," Marcus said, his voice bold. "Can't she get a new one?" Frau Kessler shook her head. "There are procedures. She must come with me to sort this out." Elise stood slowly, clutching her satchel to her chest. Her green eyes met mine, and I saw fear flickering in them. "I'll be back soon, right?" she asked, her voice small. "Of course," I said, trying to sound confident. "We'll wait for you." She gave a shaky nod and followed Frau Kessler out of the compartment, her green coat disappearing down the corridor. The door slid shut, leaving us in silence. The train slowed as it approached a small station, a quiet stop between Winter and Solberg. Snow blanketed the platform, and a single lamppost cast a pale glow. We waited, expecting Elise to return any moment. Minutes dragged on, each one heavier than the last. Livia fidgeted with her scarf, and Marcus kept checking his watch. "She'll be fine," I said, but my voice sounded hollow even to me. Then the train's whistle sounded, sharp and final. The carriage jolted as it began to move again. We rushed to the window, pressing our faces to the cold glass. There, on the snowy platform, stood Elise. She looked tiny, her green coat a splash of color against the endless white. Her satchel hung at her side, and her shoulders were hunched, as if the weight of the moment was too much to bear. "Stop the train!" Livia shouted, but the words were useless. The train picked up speed, and Elise grew smaller, a lone figure swallowed by the snow. Elise stood alone on the snowy platform, her small figure barely visible through the swirling flakes. She wasn't wearing her green coat, it lay crumpled on the seat beside us, a haunting reminder of her absence. She wore only a thin gray sweater, her arms wrapped tightly around herself as if she could ward off the biting cold. Her face was pale, her green eyes wide with fear, locked on the train as it pulled away. We screamed her name, Livia's voice cracking, Marcus pounding on the window, but the glass muffled our cries, and Elise couldn't hear us. The train gathered speed, and in moments, the station vanished into the gray haze of snow. The compartment fell silent, the air heavy with shock. Elise's green coat lay where she'd left it, its fleece lining peeking out like a wound. My hands were cold despite the warmth of the train, my fingers trembling as I reached out to touch the coat. It felt wrong to see it there, abandoned, while Elise stood alone in the freezing world outside. Livia's voice broke the silence, barely a whisper. How could they leave her like that? Her eyes glistened with unshed tears. Marcus stared at the floor, his jaw tight, as if he could will the train to turn back. None of us spoke for a long moment. We were just kids, 12, 13 years old, and the weight of what had happened was too much to carry. How could an adult, someone in a uniform, someone trusted, leave an 11-year-old girl alone in the snow without even her coat? The train hummed along, oblivious to our panic. Outside, the Alps loomed like silent giants, their peaks shrouded in mist. The fields were endless stretches of white, broken only by the occasional cluster of snow-laden trees. My heart pounded as my mind raced with questions. What would happen to Elise? Could she find shelter? Did she even know where she was? She was so young, so quiet, how could she survive out there alone? "We have to do something," I said finally, my voice shaking but firm. Livia and Marcus looked at me, their faces a mix of fear and hope. "We can't just sit here." "But what can we do?" Marcus asked, his practical nature surfacing. "We're on a moving train. And we're just kids." "I don't care," I snapped, surprising myself with the force of my words. "Elise is out there. She's alone. We have to tell someone." The train slowed as it approached another small station, a halfway point between Vintera and Solberg. The platform was nearly empty, save for a few bundled-up travelers and a station worker sweeping snow. We scanned the crowd through the window, hoping against hope that Elise had somehow boarded another carriage or found her way here. But there was no sign of her green eyes or chestnut hair. The weight of her absence pressed harder. I kept picturing her at that station, shivering in her sweater, her satchel clutched to her chest. I imagined her searching for help, her breath clouding in the frigid air, her small hands red from the cold. Did she have her school ID? Did she have any money? I didn't know, and the not knowing was a knife in my chest. "We need to find the inspector," I said, standing up. My legs felt unsteady, but I grabbed Elise's coat, holding it like a lifeline. Livia and Marcus nodded, and we left the compartment, stepping into the narrow corridor of the train. The carriage swayed beneath us, and the hum of voices from other passengers filled the air. Adults walked past, their faces buried in newspapers or phones. None of them noticing three frightened children clutching a green coat. We found Frau Kessler in the next carriage. Her navy uniform crisp as she checked tickets with mechanical precision. Her clipboard was tucked under one arm, and her expression was as unyielding as before. My heart raced as I stepped forward, Elise's coat heavy in my arms. "Excuse me, Frau Kessler," I said, my voice louder than I expected. She turned, her eyes narrowing slightly. "Our friend Elise, she's still at that station. She didn't have her coat. She's only 11. Please, we need to help her." Frau Kessler's face didn't soften. She adjusted her cap and sighed, as if we were an inconvenience. "She didn't have a valid ticket," she said, her tone flat. "Rules are rules. She'll need to wait for her parents or buy another ticket." "But she's alone," Livia burst out, her voice trembling. "It's freezing out there. She could get sick, or worse." The inspector's eyes flickered, but only for a moment. "The station staff will handle it," she said, turning back to her clipboard. "Now, return to your seats." Marcus stepped forward, his fists clenched. "You can't just leave her. She's a kid, like us. What if it was your daughter?" Frau Kessler paused, her pen hovering over her clipboard. For a second, I thought she might listen. But then she shook her head. "I have a job to do," she said, and walked away, her boots clicking on the floor. We stood there, stunned. The adults around us continued their conversations, oblivious to the storm inside us. I felt a surge of anger. How could she be so cold? How could she not care? Elise was out there, alone, and this woman acted like it was nothing. Back in our compartment, the green coat seemed to mock us. I laid it carefully on the seat, smoothing the fabric as if it could somehow bring Elise back. Livia sank onto the bench, her face buried in her hands. "What do we do now?" she whispered. "We can't give up," I said, though my own voice wavered. "When we get to Solberg, we'll find someone, a station manager, a police officer, anyone. We'll make them listen." The train pressed on, the snowy landscape blurring past. Every minute felt like a betrayal, carrying us farther from Elise. I kept seeing her face. Those wide green eyes, the way she'd whispered, "I'll be back soon." I wondered if she was still standing on that platform, or if she'd found a warm place to wait. I hoped someone kind had seen her, a mother, a teacher, anyone who would know a child shouldn't be left alone. When the train finally pulled into Solberg, the platform was bustling with people. The village was smaller than Vintera, its station a quaint wooden building with icicles hanging from the eaves. The air was sharp, and snow crunched under our boots as we stepped off the train. I carried Elise's coat, its weight both a comfort and a burden. The market we'd been so excited to visit felt like a distant dream now. Our adventure had turned into a nightmare. We scanned the crowd, hoping against reason that Elise had found a way to Solberg. But there was no sign of her. The station was alive with travelers, their voices mingling with the hiss of steam from a nearby train. A vendor sold hot cider from a cart, the sweet smell clashing with our fear. "We need to find the station master," Marcus said, his voice steady despite the worry in his eyes. We pushed through the crowd, our breath visible in the cold, until we found a small office with a sign reading Bahnhofleitung. Inside, a man with gray hair and a kind face sat behind a desk, scribbling in a ledger. "Excuse me, sir," I said, stepping forward. My voice trembled, but I forced myself to keep going. Our friend was left at a station. She's only 11, and she doesn't have her coat. We need to get help for her." The man, Herbraun, according to his nameplate, looked up, his brow furrowing. "Left at a station? Which one?" I explained everything: the ticket inspector, Elisa's lost ticket, the snowy platform where we'd last seen her. Herbraun listened, his expression growing more serious with each word. When I finished, he picked up a phone and began speaking rapidly in German, his tone urgent. I caught fragments of the conversation, something about contacting the previous station and alerting the local police. "She'll be all right," Herbraun said when he hung up, though his eyes betrayed his concern. "The station staff at Hinterwald are checking now. They'll find her and keep her safe until we can sort this out." "But what if they don't?" Livia asked, her voice small. "What if she's still out there in the snow?" Herbraun hesitated, then offered a reassuring smile. "Hinterwald is a small station, but there's a waiting room with heat. And the staff are good people. They'll look after her." His words were meant to comfort us, but they didn't erase the image of Elise standing alone, her sweater no match for the Swiss winter. We thanked him and returned to the platform, unsure what to do next. The plan had been to explore Solberg, but none of us could stomach the idea of wandering the market without Elise. Instead, we found a bench near the station entrance. Huddling together against the cold, time crawled. Every train that arrived sent us leaping to our feet, searching the faces of the passengers. But Elise was never among them. The sky darkened, the snow falling heavier now, blanketing the village in silence. I clutched her coat tighter, my fingers tracing the seams her mother had sewn. I thought of Elise's family back in Vintera, her mother, who'd made the coat. Her younger brother, who always begged her to draw him pictures. Did they know she was missing? Were they waiting for her, unaware of the cold platform where she'd been left? "We should have stayed with her," Marcus said suddenly, his voice thick with guilt. "We should have made the inspector let her stay." "We couldn't," I said, though the words felt hollow. "She told us to wait. We thought she'd come back." Livia wiped her eyes. "What if she's still there, freezing? What if no one found her?" The questions hung between us, unanswered. The station lights flickered on, casting a golden glow over the snow. I imagined Elisa's mother calling our school, her voice rising with panic when she learned her daughter hadn't come home. The thought made my chest ache. Finally, Herbraun emerged from his office, his coat dusted with snow. "I have news," he said, his face a mix of relief and concern. "They found your friend at Hinterwald. She's safe in the station's waiting room. A worker gave her some tea and a blanket, and the police are on their way to bring her back to Vintera." Relief flooded through me, but it was tempered by worry. "Is she okay?" I asked. "Was she hurt?" "She's cold and shaken, but unharmed," Herbraun said. "The police will contact her family. You did the right thing, coming to me." We nodded, but the weight didn't lift entirely. Elise was safe, but she'd been alone for hours, scared and cold because of a lost ticket and an inspector's indifference. We thanked Herbraun and returned to the bench, waiting for the next train back to Vintera. I held Elise's coat, vowing to give it back to her myself. The ride home was quiet. The train's rhythm, once comforting, now felt like a reminder of our failure to protect our friend. Snow fell outside, and I wondered if Elise was still clutching her satchel, if she was thinking of us as we were of her. When we reached Vintera, the station was nearly empty, the city lights glowing through the snow. I hurried home, Elise's coat still in my arms. My mother was waiting at the door, her face pale with worry. "You're late," she said, then saw my expression. "What's wrong?" The words spilled out, mixed with tears. I told her about Elise, the inspector, the snowy platform, and the station master's call. My mother listened, her hand tightening around mine. When I finished, she took Elise's coat and held it gently, as if it were a piece of her. "Where is she now?" my mother asked, her voice sharp with fear. "They found her," I said. "She's safe, but she was alone for so long." My mother didn't hesitate. She grabbed her phone and dialed Elise's family. I heard the low murmur of her voice, then a sob from the other end of the line. Elise's mother hadn't known where her daughter was. The police had just called, confirming Elise was on her way home, but the fear in her mother's voice echoed my OWN. As my mother spoke, I sank onto the couch, still seeing Elise on that platform. The adventure we'd planned with such excitement had turned into something else, a lesson in how quickly the world could turn cold, how adults could fail you, how a single moment could change everything. I didn't know if Elise would ever forgive us for leaving her behind, even if we hadn't meant to. All I knew was that I'd never forget the sight of her, small and alone, swallowed by the snow. That night, sleep was impossible. I lay in my bed, the darkness of my room pressing against me like a weight. The house was silent, save for the faint creak of the radiator, but my mind was deafening. Over and over, I saw Elise on that snowy platform at Hinterwald, her thin gray sweater no match for the biting wind, her green eyes wide with fear as the train pulled away. Her small figure seemed to shrink with every replay, her arms wrapped tightly around herself, alone in a world of snow. I didn't know if I'd ever see her again, and the uncertainty gnawed at me, sharper than the winter cold. Morning came, gray and heavy. Snow still blanketed Ventura's streets, muffling the sounds of the waking town. My first thought was of Elise, her quiet laugh, her satchel full of treasures, her green coat still folded on the chair in our living room. I shuffled to the kitchen, where my mother stood by the counter, speaking softly into the phone. Her face was drawn, her eyes shadowed from a sleepless night. When she saw me, she offered a tired smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Is there news?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper, afraid of the answer. My mother set the phone down, her hands trembling slightly. "Not yet," she said. "Elise's parents are with the police now. They're organizing a search, checking the station and the nearby village. They'll find her, sweetheart. Try not to worry." Her words were meant to comfort, but they felt empty. How could I not worry? Elise was 11 years old, shy and gentle, with no ticket, no coat, no money. The image of her shivering in the snow haunted me. I sank into a chair at the kitchen table, my hands shaking as I stared at the wood grain. Her green coat was in the next room, a constant reminder of my failure to protect her. I should have grabbed it, run after her, done something. But I hadn't, and now she was out there, alone. Later that morning, my mother and I walked through the snowy streets to Elise's house. The air was sharp, stinging my cheeks, and the town felt eerily quiet, as if it, too, was holding its breath. Elise's home was a small, tidy chalet with a sloped roof and a wooden porch. Inside, her parents sat in the living room, their faces pale and drawn. Her mother, Frau Lena, clutched a crumpled tissue, her eyes red from crying. Her father, Herr Thomas, paced near the window, his hands clenched into fists. Elise's younger brother, Emile, sat on the floor, clutching one of her sketchbooks, his small face confused and frightened. Frau Lena took my hands, her grip surprisingly strong. "Tell me again," she said, her voice breaking. "Everything you remember." I swallowed hard, my throat tight, and recounted the story. I described the train, the inspector's stern face, Elisa's frantic search for her ticket, and the moment she was let out of the compartment. I told them how we'd seen her on the platform, standing alone without her coat, her figure swallowed by the snow as the train pulled away. My voice wavered as I spoke, and when I finished, Frau Lena covered her face and sobbed, her shoulders shaking. Herr Thomas stopped pacing, his eyes blazing with a mix of anger and despair. How could they do this? He said, his voice low and raw. How could they leave a child alone in the snow? She's 11. My mother put a hand on his arm, but he pulled away, staring out the window at the falling snow. Emil looked up from the sketchbook, his voice small. Is Elise coming home soon? No one answered. The silence was unbearable. That afternoon, 2 police officers arrived at Elisa's house, their boots leaving wet tracks on the floor. They were kind but serious, their notebooks open as they asked questions. I repeated the story again, my words feeling more hollow each time. They wanted to know every detail, the time we'd left Vintera, the name of the station, what Elise was wearing. I described her gray sweater, her chestnut hair with its ribbon, her satchel with the goat keychain. The officers nodded, scribbling notes, and promised to investigate. They'd already contacted the Hinterwald station and were sending a team to search the area. But their calm professionalism only deepened my fear. Promises didn't bring Elise back. That night, I lay awake again, the image of Elise on the platform burning behind my eyes. I kept hearing her soft voice, "I'll be back soon." We'd waited, but she hadn't returned. The guilt was a stone in my chest, heavy and unyielding. I wondered if she'd found shelter, if someone had seen her and offered help. Or was she still out there, lost in the snow, her small hands clutching her satchel for comfort? The days that followed were a blur of hope and dread. At school, Elisa's absence was a wound. Teachers spoke in hushed tones, their lessons interrupted by long pauses. Classmates whispered rumors, some said she'd run away, others that she'd caught another train. But I knew the truth. She hadn't run. She'd been forced off the train, left behind because of a missing piece of paper. I avoided the train station on my way home, unable to face the place where we'd lost her each day. I checked with my mother for news, my heart leaping at every phone call. But the updates were always the same. The police were searching, the station staff had seen nothing, Elisa's parents were frantic. I carried her green coat everywhere, unable to leave it behind. It was my last connection to her, a reminder of the friend I'd failed. One gray afternoon, nearly a week later, Herr Thomas came to our house. His coat was dusted with snow, and his eyes were bloodshot, as if he hadn't slept in days. He sat at our kitchen table, his hands folded tightly, and spoke in a voice so quiet I had to lean forward to hear him. "They found her," he said. My breath caught, my heart pounding. For a moment, hope flared. Maybe she was safe, waiting for us at the station. But Herr Thomas's face told a different story. He looked down at his hands, his voice breaking. She was near Hinterwald station, in a wooded area just off the platform. She didn't make it through the night. The world stopped. My mother gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. I felt like I was falling, the room tilting around me. "No," I whispered, shaking my head. "No, she can't be." Herr Thomas nodded, tears spilling down his cheeks. "The police said she likely wandered from the platform, looking for shelter. The cold? It was too much." I saw her again in my mind, her small figure in the snow, her sweater soaked, her green eyes searching for help that never came. The image was no longer just a memory. It was real, final, unbearable. My hands shook, and tears blurred my vision. My mother reached for me, but I pulled away, clutching Elise's coat to my chest. That night, I cried until my throat was raw, until there were no tears left. Elise's coat lay on my bed, its green fabric a cruel reminder of her absence. I touched it, tracing the stitches her mother had sewn, and it felt like touching a ghost. She'd been so full of life, her shy smile, her sketches, the way she'd laugh when we teased her about her peppermint candies. Now she was gone, taken by a cold night and an uncaring system. The days that followed were shrouded in grief. Elise's parents held a memorial service in Ventura's small church, its stone walls echoing with the soft sobs of those who loved her. The pews were filled with neighbors, teachers, and classmates, all carrying flowers, white roses, her favorite. Emile sat in the front row, clutching her sketchbook, his small face blank with shock. I stood near the back, holding her coat, my hands trembling. I couldn't stop seeing her on that platform, couldn't stop hearing her whispered promise to return. The priest spoke of peace and eternal rest, but his words felt distant. Nothing could undo what had happened. Nothing could erase the image of Elise, alone and freezing, left behind because of a ticket and an inspector's indifference. I looked at Frau Kessler's name in my mind, her stern face burned into my memory. She hadn't been at the service, no one from the train company had. Their absence felt like another betrayal. In the weeks that followed, Ventera seemed to dim. The snow, once magical, now felt oppressive, a constant reminder of that night. At school, Elise's desk sat empty, her name still on the attendance list for weeks before a teacher finally erased it. Livia, Marcus, and I grew quieter, our laughter replaced by a shared guilt. We'd been powerless, but that didn't ease the pain. We should have fought harder, shouted louder, refused to let the train move. But we were children, and children don't have the power to stop adults. The police investigation brought little closure. They questioned Frau Kessler, who repeated her story about rules and procedures. The station staff at Hinterwald said they'd never seen Elise after the train left. Perhaps she'd wandered into the woods before they could check the platform. No one was held accountable, not really. The train company issued a statement about regrettable circumstances and promised to review their policies, but it felt hollow. Like words meant to quiet a storm. I kept Elise's coat in my room, unable to return it to her family. Frau Lena had told me to keep it, saying it was too painful to see. Sometimes, I'd hold it and imagine Elise still with us, sketching in her notebook or sharing her candies. I wondered what she'd been thinking in those final moments, alone in the snow. Had she been scared? Had she called for us? The questions haunted me, unanswered. Years passed, but the winter of Elise's loss never faded. I grew older, left Ventera, and moved through the world, but her memory stayed with me, sharp and unyielding. Every time I saw a train, I heard the hum of its wheels, saw the snowy platform, felt the weight of her coat in my arms. Childhood memories are supposed to soften with time, but this one remained vivid, a scar on my heart. Elise taught me lessons I wasn't ready to learn. I learned that adults, even those in uniforms, even those with power, don't always protect the vulnerable. I learned that life can be cruel, that a single moment, a lost ticket, a cold night, can steal someone forever. I learned to question authority, to speak up, to fight for those who can't fight for themselves. But those lessons came at a cost. Even now, when winter blankets the world in snow, I think of Elise. I see her small figure on the platform, her arms wrapped around herself, waiting for help that never came. I whisper her name sometimes, as if she can still hear me, as if I can still reach her across the years. Elise was only 11. She deserved warmth, safety, and a life full of laughter. Instead, she was lost to a cold night and a system that failed her. Her story lives in me, a reminder to hold tight to those we love, to question those who wield power, and to never let silence win. If you're reading this, wherever you are, carry Elise's story with you. Share it, remember it, let it remind you to look out for the small, the quiet, the vulnerable. Let it remind you that even in the coldest moments, we can choose to act with kindness. Thank you for listening, for keeping her memory alive.